We're going to hear more from that lead detective who talks about what happened when Jesus Monroy was confronted with the evidence against him in the murder of the mother of his unborn child, Mia Campos.
Did you know that in middle-income communities there are about 13 books for every child?
But in some underserved communities,
There's only one book for every 300 children.
studies show that having lots of books at home is one of the best ways to help a child succeed in school and beyond.
That's why the Scripps Howard Fund started the If You Give a Child a Book campaign to give books to children who need them most, like me.
So please, if you could give a child a book today,
Just scan the QR code. We would be so grateful.
Thanks for being with us on this Monday morning. I'm Julie Graham. This morning, we're bringing you the probable cause hearing of defendant Jesus Monroy. So this young man was accused in the murder of Mia Campos, who was carrying his unborn baby. Now, he appeared in court last week in Gwinnett County, Georgia, which is just outside of Atlanta. Let's take a listen together to the case. Detective described Mia's autopsy and also his follow-up interview that he did with the suspect.
After locating those messages, I had the autopsy conducted by Gwinnett Medical Examiner Dr. Terry on the 16th. Dr. Terry ruled Mia's death a homicide due to asphyxiation based on compression of the throat. Dr. Terry also provided me with preliminary information telling me that the baby, who was close to 7 months, was healthy and would have survived if it was not for the death of the mother, basically saying the baby was viable and was in good health condition and was on par with where it should have been for that age frame. I conducted a canvass shortly after, which is based on the ring footage of Mia leaving her residence. It was thought that she may have been picked up in a vehicle in front of her house, but further video obtained from across the street in her neighborhood showed that she did not, in fact, get picked up in front of her house, but she actually walked up the street, which was kind of confirming the conversation between her and Jesus. I then had a follow-up interview with Jesus, where I called him and asked him to meet with me at Gwinnett County Police Headquarters, and he did. This interview was audio and video recorded. Started off with me reading Jesus's Miranda rights and him agreeing to speak with myself and Detective Damien. During this interview, Jesus was asked about what happened. He provided similar information to what he originally provided on scene, but ultimately, when confronted with the messages and the newfound evidence regarding Mia's death, he denied sending the messages, although he did admit to having his phone on him the entirety of that day, being home alone at his residence, nobody else having access to his cell phone or being able to send any messages from his cell phone. He still denied sending any messages, leaving his residence that day, or communicating in any way with Mia physically or digitally after 8 p.m. During that interview, I seized Jesus' cell phone. I later obtained a search warrant for Jesus' cell phone for the download of his contents. I also submitted multiple court orders to include a preferential warrant for his location information. After obtaining the cell phone download, I was able to get location data from that cell phone. The location data that I obtained showed that on the 14th, the day of Mia's and the unborn child's passing, Jesus' cell phone showed that he was not in fact at home, but he left his residence that night around 10:19. The ordinance placed Jesus near the intersection of Lenore Road and Lenore Church Road, which is just outside of his residence. And I'm just providing a couple of these coordinates for reference. There's a lot of them. At 10:30, placed him at the intersection of Stevens Road and Rosebud Road, which is just prior to reaching Mia's neighborhood. At 10:32 p.m., it placed him just outside of Mia's neighborhood, on Stevens Road near Burning Bush Drive, Burning Bush Drive being the street of where her residence is located. And at 11:09 p.m., it placed him in the woods intersection of Stephen Rose and Rosebud Road, which appeared to be in the exact same spot where her body was later located later that night. I also downloaded Mia's phone along with Jesus's, and with the download of both phones, I was able to obtain the messages that were deleted that did not appear on his physical phone or on Mia's physical phone outside of the screen recording. The message conversation between them was extracted in the download, although previously deleted, and it did show that from his phone that the messages were sent to her and him receiving her messages and vice versa.
If you are watching this, I can all but guarantee that you or someone you love is going through the family law court process in California. And you already know that family law court can be one of the most stressful places on the planet. No court date is insignificant. It can lead to life-altering decisions, loss of time with your children, loss of property, or just an uncertain future. Ultimately, it can strip you of your happiness.
I just wanted to go over a couple things with you. And I'll start kind of where you left off. You had stated that, I think it was July 17th, my client came to the Gwinnett County Police Department headquarters for an interview with you.
Let me just double check that date. I apologize.
And may I ask what it is that you're looking at to double check that?
I'm just looking at my notes. I believe it was July 16th, that's my error.
16th.
Correct.
Okay. So July 16th, and did he come up voluntarily to the police department, or did you have to go and get him and take him back to the police department?
He did come voluntarily.
Okay. Did anybody come with him?
His brother, Enrique,
Was he interviewed as well?
he was.
Okay. And did you interview his brother or did some other detective?
I did.
What did his brother say?
His brother basically mentioned, I asked him if he was with Jesus at all at that point. He stated he was earlier in the day. He stated he had left to go to a pool nearby at some point throughout that night. He said Jesus contacted him, asking him where he was, and he told him he was at the pool and sent him a location of where he was, and that Jesus told him he was on the way to him. And then he told Jesus that he wasn't going to be there much longer, and Jesus told him, okay, well, I'm going to go back home. So he was questioned about that.
Okay. So, after, if at that interview, if I understood your testimony, at the conclusion of that interview with my client, you made the decision to arrest him for false statements.
Yes, sir.
And the basis of the false statements arrest was that, if I'm wrong, you correct me, but it was that he had told you he had not messaged with Mia Campos, the alleged victim, that evening, and you had found information that he had.
Correct. He stated he had not communicated with her at any point in time after 8 p.m.
Okay. Other than, I guess, at 11 or so, you had found text messages where he was asking where she was and if she was okay.
Correct.
When did you find, just so I get an understanding of the timing, those messages, you had testified that you were able to extract my client's phone. You did a forensic, not you, but the police department did a forensic extraction of my client's phone. And were able to recover those deleted messages?
Yes.
When did that occur?
I don't have the exact date on the top of my head.
Let me ask you, was it before or after you arrested Mr. Monroy for false statements?
It was after the fact.
After. Because you seized his phone upon arresting him there at the police department.
Correct.
So you had gone through Ms. Campos' phone and prior to that, but had not found any of the messages other than the screen recording. The screen recording from the phone that showed these text messages that may have been phones. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So, was it based on simply the screen recording that you found on her phone that looked like it was text messages between my client and Ms. Campos that you based the false statements arrest on?
Yeah, that along with the third-party statements of people saying that she had told them prior to leaving she was going to meet with Jesus. That compiled with the text messages located on her phone, kind of confirming that's kind of what led to the one. So.
Okay. So the family, her family and friends told you during your interviews that she told them she was going to go meet with my client.
Yes.
Okay. Were you aware that those same individuals gave statements to the news media outlets saying that they...
Can I object, Your Honor? I think somebody else understands the problem.
Sure, a little bit. I mean, you can understand your client's entitled to know the basis for the false statements warrants. But we're getting a little, for lack of a more eloquent way to say it, suppressing.
Understood,
Yeah,
yes.
I'll give you a little bit of latitude, but asking about the news statements, I can't determine credibility at a preliminary hearing. So I agree with the state on that particular question.
Oh, there's more to come. Still ahead, the detective continues outlining the initial investigation steps in the death of beautiful Mia Campos. Then, he's on cross with Jesus Monroy's attorney about some other issues in this case. We thank you for watching Court TV Live. We are your front row seat to justice.
Special offer.
Looking.
It is great to have you with us on this Monday morning. Welcome back. I'm Julie Grant. We are diving deep into a case in Georgia that's captivated eyes all around the world. The death of 16-year-old Mia Campos. She was a pregnant teenager who was nearly 2 months away from becoming a first-time mom, and she was so excited. But tragically, her life was cut short. Police found her dead in a wooded area near Atlanta last month. And now the suspected father of her unborn baby is accused in her murder. Police say that Jesus Monroy lured her out to the entrance of her neighborhood before taking her life. Now let's go back into the Georgia court where we're watching the probable cause hearing. This is a hearing to make sure there's enough evidence to send the case up to the higher court for trial. We've got the lead detective on the stand, and now there's some more cross coming his way.
I am what I am. I don't want pain. I don't want pity. I'm so everlasting, sparkle and expangle. Why not see things from a different angle? Your life is a...
You arrived on scene. You spoke to Ms. Campos' father, Edward Campos. You said you spoke to a medical examiner, investigator. You spoke to my client and to Joshua. And what was his last name? I just couldn't recall.
I believe it was Hernandez.
Okay. Those four individuals are the only folks that you spoke to there on scene?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you testified previously that my client discovered, you had learned on your way to the scene before you got there that my client had discovered Ms. Campos' body. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. And did you ask anybody there on scene or my client who had found Ms. Campos' body?
Yes, as you stated, he did.
That he had found the body?
Correct. In both of my interviews with him.
Okay. Who all was searching for Ms. Campos out there that night?
Mr. Edward Campos, Jesus, I believe Joshua, if I'm not mistaken, and there may have been additional parties, but I don't recall off the top of my head.
Okay. Do you know if her mother was out there, or brother or sister?
Who's?
Ms. Campos's.
Yes. I don't believe they assisted in the search, but I don't recall off the top of my head.
Okay. And my client's father was also out there?
Yes.
Was he assisting in the search as well?
I don't recall.
Okay. But other than those four people, all the other people, if they were searching for her or not, you did not speak to them that evening?
Correct.
Okay. folks forensically extract her phone and you knew it, or did you just look through it like a normal phone?
CSI took her phone back and both. I looked through it normally and it was extracted as well.
Okay. And when you looked at it and through the forensic extraction, you did not find the messages between her and my client at that time? Other than the screen recording, I'm sorry, I should clarify that. Other than the screen recording that she took of her on her phone, did you find any evidence that my client had messaged with her?
Yes, it came back in the extraction of her phone.
Okay.
His messages appeared.
And when did you find those?
I can't tell you the exact date.
Was it before he was interviewed?
No.
But ultimately on the actual download of the cell phone, the examiners were able to recover these same messages that were on the screen recording.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you ever look on the phone to see whether there were other messages between Ms. Campos and my client that were similar, where he had asked her to delete messages or anything like that?
I can't recall off the top of my head.
Well, whether they exist or whether you look for them?
Either way.
Okay, understood. When you got there to the scene, where was Ms. Campos' body?
By the time I arrived on scene, it had already been moved, so it was near the sidewalk.
Okay. And do you know how her body ended up getting to the sidewalk from wherever it originally was?
Yes, Mr. Edward Campos, her father, and Jesus Monroy picked her up and moved her to the side.
Okay, so where was her body at before they moved it, if you want?
Inside of the woods.
Were you ever able to determine, did you ask them to take you to where they actually exact spot they found her body?
Yes, I just don't have a way to describe that.
Okay, I understand, but you were able to observe that at some point?
Yes.
Okay. How far from where her body was at, how far was it moved?
I'm not a good judge of distance, I can't really say, but it wasn't too far.
Okay, so we can ballpark it. Are we talking 10 feet, 15 feet? Are we talking 100 yards?
Less than 100 yards.
Okay. And then, but my client and her father were the two that moved the body.
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you said that both you and the medical examiner's investigator there on scene were not able to observe any signs of an obvious cause of death, any physical signs of trauma to her body at that time?
Correct, that's what I was given by the medical examiner investigator on scene at the time.
Okay, so there were no bruising to her neck or anywhere else on her body that would be indicative of a physical assault?
Based on what I was told, is kind of what I stated. As far as what he documented, I'm not sure. But also, there were no clear signs at that point.
Understood. Did you or crime scene investigations, the medical examiner's office, anybody look for, take any swabbings of Ms. Campos' body for signs of DNA from another person or any trace evidence that might be on her body from her setting?
Good. Yes, I believe crime scene did, if I'm not mistaken.